It was a peaceful morning, like many others in Glendale. Michael Carter, a blind man, sat outside his favorite coffee shop, enjoying the warm sun. His companion, Zeus, a loyal German shepherd, sat dutifully by his side. Zeus wasn't just any dog. He was a retired K-9 officer trained to protect. The peaceful scene took a sharp turn when three motorcyclists arrived, loud and overconfident. They immediately fixated on Zeus, joking and testing the dog's patience. Michael, unaware of their antics, sensed Zeus growing tense. When one biker, Chuck, decided to take things too far and kicked Zeus as a joke, the scene erupted. But what Chuck didn't know was that Zeus wasn't just a guide dog. He was trained to defend. What unfolded next would leave everyone stunned and serve as a lesson that respect and humility matter more than arrogance. Glendale was alive with the gentle hum of life that morning. The local coffee shop bustled with customers, enjoying their drinks and catching up with neighbors. At one table, Michael Carter sat quietly. Despite his blindness, his world was filled with other vibrant sensations: the aroma of fresh coffee, the sound of the birds, and the gentle touch of the breeze on his skin. Next to Michael sat Zeus, a German shepherd who wasn't just a guide dog but a retired K-9 officer. Zeus had been by Michael's side for years, offering guidance and protection. Though his days of active service were over, his instincts were sharp and his loyalty unwavering. The duo was a regular sight at the cafe, known and loved by many of the patrons. But that morning, their peace was interrupted by the thunderous roar of motorcycles pulling up. Three bikers, clad in leather jackets and exuding an air of dominance, dismounted. They laughed loudly, their voices cutting through the calm ambiance. Chuck, the leader, was the first to notice Zeus. He strode over, his eyes filled with a mix of curiosity and arrogance. "Nice dog you got there," he sneered, leaning closer than Zeus liked. The German shepherd stiffened, his eyes fixed on Chuck, a low growl escaping his throat. Michael, unaware of Chuck's demeanor, responded politely, "Thank you. Zeus is my best friend." Chuck smirked, his friends chuckling in the background. "Let's see if he's as tough as he looks," Chuck said, reaching out toward Zeus's snout. Zeus, trained to detect threats, stepped back and growled again, louder this time. The tension in the air grew. While some patrons tried to ignore the scene, others began filming discreetly. Chuck, perhaps feeling the pressure of an audience, laughed nervously but refused to back down. His friends egged him on, their laughter echoing in the cafe. Michael reached out to calm Zeus, sensing the change in his companion's behavior. "It's okay, buddy," he murmured. But Zeus wasn't calming down. His instincts told him danger was near, and he was ready to protect. "I'll continue writing the next parts while condensing and refining to keep it within the word limit." Chuck couldn't let it go. The crowd's eyes on him and his friends' laughter fueled his bruised ego. "Relax, it's just a dog," he said dismissively, but his tone held a challenge. He made exaggerated gestures toward Zeus, testing the dog's reactions. Zeus didn't flinch but stood firm, his body tense, his growl low and deliberate, a clear warning. Michael, still unaware of the unfolding drama, sensed the shift in energy. "Zeus, what's wrong?" he asked softly, running his hand over the dog's neck. The German shepherd didn't respond, his focus locked on Chuck. Zeus's body language made it clear. This wasn't a game. The crowd murmured uneasily as Chuck moved closer. "What's the matter, big guy? Not so tough after all?" he taunted, leaning in again. This time his hand brushed Michael's chair, a move Zeus interpreted as a direct threat. In an instant, Zeus rose to his feet, his stance rigid, his bark loud and commanding. The crowd gasped as the air seemed to crackle with tension. "Hey, stop it!" a woman in the crowd shouted, her voice breaking through the murmur. "Leave the dog alone." Her words caused Chuck to hesitate for a moment, but his pride wouldn't let him back down. Instead, he turned to his friends, laughing nervously. "It's just a dog," he repeated, but his bravado was slipping. Michael tightened his grip on Zeus's leash. "Someone, please, tell me what's going on," he said, his voice firm but laced with worry. The woman stepped closer. "Your dog's protecting you," she said. "That man's trying to provoke him." Chuck, realizing he was losing control of the situation, made one final move. He kicked a nearby chair towards Zeus, the metal scraping loudly against the pavement. Zeus reacted instantly, dodging the chair with practiced agility and positioning himself directly between Michael and Chuck. "Enough!" Michael's voice rang out, his confidence rising as he sensed the seriousness of the moment. "You need to leave now." Chuck froze, his smirk replaced by uncertainty. The crowd's murmurs turned to glares, their judgment palpable. Defeated and humiliated, Chuck slowly backed away, his friends following in silence. As Chuck and his friends disappeared around the corner, the tension in the cafe eased, replaced by a flood of murmurs and quiet chatter. Michael, still gripping Zeus's leash, felt the unease in the air even without seeing it. "What happened?" he asked, his voice calm but tinged with concern. The woman who had spoken up earlier approached him. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice steady but still carrying traces of adrenaline. "That man, he was trying to provoke your dog, but Zeus didn't let him." Michael knelt beside Zeus, running his hands through the dog's fur. "Good boy," he murmured softly. Zeus's stance relaxed slightly, but his eyes remained fixed on the direction Chuck had left. "Thank you for speaking up," Michael said to the woman, his gratitude sincere. The cafe patrons began to disperse, a few offering Michael reassuring words as they passed. The older man who had tried to intervene earlier approached with a cautious smile. "You've got a remarkable dog," he said, "but you should keep your guard up. That guy didn't seem like the type to let things go." Michael nodded, the man's words settling uneasily in his mind. Zeus let out a soft whine, his instincts still on high alert. Michael could feel the dog's unease through the leash. "Zeus doesn't usually act like this," he said, almost to himself. "He's telling me something's not right." The woman crouched to meet Zeus's gaze. "This dog, he's not ordinary, is he?" she asked. Michael hesitated, then replied, "No, he's not. Zeus was a K-9 officer before he came to me. He's trained to detect danger and protect." Her eyes widened slightly. "That explains a lot. He's incredible." Michael gave a faint smile but couldn't shake the worry lingering in his chest. "Thank you," he said again. Then gripping Zeus's leash, he stood. "I think it's time we head home." As they walked away, the cafe fell quiet once more. But Michael couldn't ignore the sense that this was far from over, and neither could Zeus. Michael and Zeus walked the familiar path home, but something felt different. Each step felt heavier, and Zeus's alert posture added to the unease. Michael couldn't see the world around him, but he trusted Zeus implicitly. "What's on your mind, buddy?" he asked, his voice low. When they reached Michael's small apartment, Zeus immediately began sniffing every corner of the space, his behavior more intense than usual. Michael unclipped the leash and placed it on the counter, watching as Zeus inspected the apartment with the precision of a trained protector. "You're acting strange today," Michael remarked, filling Zeus's water bowl. The dog ignored it, sitting by the door with his ears perked and his gaze fixed. Michael furrowed his brow. "What's going on, Zeus?" He sat on the couch, stroking Zeus's fur as his thoughts raced back to the cafe. Chuck's behavior had been unnerving, but Zeus's reaction was what truly troubled him. Zeus had served in dangerous situations during his K-9 years, and his instincts had saved lives. Now those instincts were returning. Michael's hand stilled on Zeus's head as a distant sound reached his ears, the faint rumble of motorcycle engines. Zeus's ears perked, and his body tensed. Michael leaned closer. "Is that?" The sound faded, replaced by silence, but Zeus remained on high alert. Michael stood and locked the door, his hand trembling slightly. "It's just my imagination," he muttered. But the tension in Zeus's posture said otherwise. As night fell, Michael tried to relax. He sliced an apple at the dining table while Zeus lay by his side. But the dog's sharp eyes stayed locked on the door, his every breath measured and ready. When the rumble of engines returned, louder this time, Zeus sprang to his feet. Michael froze, the knife still in his hand. "Zeus, what is it?" he whispered. The engine stopped abruptly and a heavy silence followed. Then a sharp knock echoed through the apartment. Zeus growled low, positioning himself between Michael and the door. Michael's heart raced. "Who is it?" he called out, trying to sound calm. The response made his blood run cold. "Relax, it's just me." Chuck Michael's grip on Zeus's leash tightened as he stepped cautiously toward the door. Zeus stood firm, his body coiled like a spring ready to snap. "What do you want?" Michael demanded, his voice steady but filled with tension. Chuck's tone from the other side of the door was casual, almost mocking. "Just wanted to talk, man. No hard feelings, right?" Michael didn't reply immediately. His mind raced, weighing his options. He couldn't see Chuck's expression, but the memory of his earlier behavior was enough to keep him wary. Zeus growled louder, the sound vibrating through the small apartment like a warning siren. "You need to leave," Michael said firmly. "I don't want any trouble." The murmurs outside the door grew louder. Michael could hear the faint shuffle of footsteps. More than one person. Zeus's growl deepened, and Michael's fingers trembled as he placed a hand on the dog's head. "It's okay, boy," he whispered, though he wasn't sure if he believed it himself. A loud, deliberate thud against the door made Michael jump. Zeus barked sharply, his body pressing against the door, as if daring Chuck to cross the threshold. "Come on, man," Chuck's voice carried a mocking edge. "No need to get your dog worked up. Let's just have a chat." Michael backed away from the door, pulling Zeus with him. "If you don't leave, I'm calling the police." Chuck chuckled, but the sound was strained. "Relax, no one's here to hurt you. Just wanted to clear the air." Michael grabbed his phone from the counter, his fingers fumbling to dial 911. As the line connected, he whispered urgently to the dispatcher, explaining the situation. The operator assured him that officers were on their way. Outside, the voices grew quieter. Then the faint sound of something scraping against the window reached Michael's ears. Zeus's head snapped toward the noise, his sharp bark filling the apartment. Michael's pulse quickened. "What are they doing?" he muttered, clutching the phone tighter. The dispatcher's voice was calm but firm. "Stay inside and keep your dog with you. Officers are en route." Michael's heart pounded as Zeus moved to the window, his body tense and ready. The scraping noise stopped abruptly, replaced by hurried footsteps. Then came the sound of retreating motorcycles, their engines roaring to life before fading into the distance. Zeus didn't relax, and neither did Michael. Even as the flashing red and blue lights of the police arrived, the tension in the apartment lingered, heavy and suffocating. Chuck might have retreated for now, but Michael knew this wasn't the end. The police officers entered Michael's apartment cautiously, their flashlights sweeping the room. Zeus, though still tense, stood by Michael's side, his watchful eyes tracking every movement. One officer knelt down, addressing Michael calmly. "Can you tell us exactly what happened?" Michael recounted the events as best as he could, describing Chuck's earlier provocation at the cafe and the unsettling encounter outside his door. "He didn't do anything outright violent," Michael admitted, his grip on Zeus's leash still firm. "But I could feel his intent. And Zeus doesn't react like this unless there's a real threat." The officers nodded, taking notes and reassuring Michael that they would increase patrols in the area. One officer examined the area near the window, where faint scrape marks confirmed Michael's suspicions. "He's testing boundaries," the officer said, "probably trying to intimidate you." Zeus let out a soft growl as the officer spoke. His ears perked toward the window. The officer looked at the dog, impressed. "You've got a smart one here," he said. "Listen to him. He's trained to detect things most of us can't." After completing their sweep, the officers advised Michael to stay vigilant. "If you feel unsafe, don't hesitate to leave the apartment," one officer said. "We'll do our best to keep an eye on the area." Michael nodded, his expression resolute. "This is my home. I'm not running away." As the officers left, Michael sat on the edge of his couch, his mind racing. Zeus lay at his feet, his body still alert. Michael stroked the dog's fur, seeking comfort in the familiar motion. "We'll get through this, buddy," he murmured. Zeus wagged his tail faintly, a small gesture of reassurance. But deep down, Michael knew he couldn't wait for Chuck to make the next move. He needed a plan. Michael woke early the next morning, though sleep had been restless and fleeting. The weight of the previous night still pressed heavily on his mind. Zeus was already awake, sitting by the door, his ears alert to every creak and whisper from the outside. The German shepherd's quiet vigilance was both comforting and unnerving. Michael reached for his phone, deciding to call his friend Rachel, a retired officer who had been instrumental in helping him adopt Zeus. Rachel answered on the second ring, her voice warm but laced with concern after hearing Michael's recount of the events. "You've got to be careful, Michael," Rachel said. "Chuck doesn't sound like someone who's going to back off easily. Zeus is trained to protect you, but this is escalating. Have you thought about contacting someone else in law enforcement?" Michael sighed. "The police already came last night. They promised to patrol, but I don't think Chuck is afraid of a little police presence. He's too arrogant for that." Rachel paused, her tone becoming serious. "Michael, Zeus is a retired K-9, but his instincts are as sharp as ever. Trust him. If he's still on edge, you need to stay prepared." Michael nodded, gripping the phone tightly. "I will. Thanks, Rachel." After ending the call, Michael turned his attention to Zeus. "Looks like we've got to stay sharp, buddy." Zeus responded with a soft bark, as if acknowledging the plan. Michael spent the day reinforcing his apartment's security. He double-checked the locks on the doors and windows, added wooden dowels to the sliding tracks, and placed a chair against the front door for extra measure. It wasn't much, but it made him feel slightly more in control. Zeus followed him through every step, his sharp eyes scanning their surroundings. Occasionally, the faint sound of a motorcycle engine would hum in the distance, causing Zeus's ears to perk and his body to tense. Each time, Michael placed a reassuring hand on his companion's head. "It's okay, Zeus. We'll be ready." By evening, the apartment felt a little safer, but the sense of looming danger remained. Michael sat at the dining table, sipping tea and stroking Zeus's fur. "Whatever happens, we face it together," he said quietly. Zeus looked up at him, his loyal eyes unwavering, ready for whatever came next. The night crept in slowly, bringing with it a thick, oppressive silence that seemed to amplify every creak and groan of the apartment. Zeus, ever vigilant, remained by the door, his posture tense and alert. Michael's nerves were fraying, but he forced himself to stay calm, trusting in Zeus's instincts. Suddenly, the faint hum of a motorcycle engine broke the quiet. This time it wasn't distant. It was right outside. Michael's heart raced as the sound grew louder, followed by the unmistakable screech of brakes. Zeus let out a deep growl, his body pressing against the door, as if anticipating an attack. Michael grabbed his phone and called 911, his voice steady but urgent. "He's back. Chuck is outside." The dispatcher assured him that officers were on their way, but Michael knew it could take precious minutes for them to arrive. He gripped Zeus's leash tightly, crouching beside his loyal companion. "We're ready, boy. Just stay with me." A loud knock echoed through the apartment, followed by Chuck's familiar voice. "Hey, man, open up. Let's have a little chat." Michael didn't reply. His pulse thundered in his ears as he tightened his grip on Zeus. Chuck's tone shifted, becoming more aggressive. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Zeus barked sharply, the sound reverberating through the apartment. Michael felt a surge of determination. "Leave now, or the police will handle this," he shouted. Chuck's response was a mocking laugh, but it faltered slightly. He didn't expect the calm defiance in Michael's voice. Still, he wasn't ready to back down. A loud thud against the door made Michael flinch, but Zeus stood firm, barking again with an intensity that echoed his years of training. Outside, the sound of sirens grew closer. Chuck hesitated, the bravado in his voice wavering. "You're lucky this time," he sneered before retreating. The door rattled slightly as Zeus pressed against it, growling low. Michael held his breath until he heard the distinct sound of police vehicles pulling up. He exhaled shakily, relief washing over him. The officers quickly assessed the situation, their presence reassuring, but also a stark reminder of how close things had come to escalating. Michael, his hand still on Zeus's head, thanked them quietly. As the night settled once again, Michael knew this wasn't over, but he also knew he and Zeus would be ready for whatever came next. If this story moved you, please take a moment to give it a like and share it with your loved ones. It could inspire someone in ways you never imagined. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Your feedback means the world to us. And if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications to stay updated on more powerful and inspiring stories like this one. Together, we can spread positivity, hope, and meaningful lessons far and wide. Thank you for being part of this incredible journey. Remember, every act of courage, big or small, has the power to change lives.